Welcome back, my friends, to the Hippie Moms podcast. What a gift we have today. We have Gina Mundy here. Thank you, Gina, for coming and joining us.
Becky, thank you for having me on today. I've already enjoyed our conversation during pre-show, and I am just so excited to talk to you.
I feel the same way. I have been looking forward to this podcast recording for so long. So, what I'd love to do is just start out the conversation. Let us get to know you. Tell us your backstory. How did you get into this work? And yeah, just let us know who you are.
Oh, sure. So I live in Michigan. I have three kids, and one just turned 20. I have two older daughters. So 20, and then the other one will be 16. And then I have my little man who's turning 10. I have been an attorney specializing in childbirth cases for 21 years. I got my first case in February. I've also been married 21 years. But basically, I wish I had a better story on how I got into the childbirth cases, but I just needed my first job out of law school and I stumbled on this job. And, when I was hired into my law firm to do these childbirth cases, I was hired into a team of over 20 people, and this is all they did with these cases. And just so your audience understands, when you have a childbirth case, these involve the birth of a baby when baby's not born healthy, whether it's due to a mistake or complication, but baby's not healthy, or sometimes baby may pass away or mom may pass away. So, as the attorney, I would come in and find out what happened, what went wrong, why, more importantly, what should have been done so baby was born healthy. Mom around to raise her baby after she gave birth to, her beautiful, beautiful baby. So that's why I said I was married for 21 years, childbirth attorney for 21 years, because I had just gotten married and having a baby was on my radar. So I wanted to stick around, do these cases to make sure that these mistakes and complications that I was seeing did not happen during the birth of my own kids. And so about 19 years deep into my profession, we had called like a near family tragic event. Baby, everybody's fine, but my niece was pregnant and she went into labor and she was giving birth to the first baby of our next generation. And she had, what I call a close call, where, we went probably about 20 minutes without knowing, okay, wait, is the baby going to be okay or not okay? I remember it like it happened yesterday. I was sitting in the kitchen. My sister called and we were all expecting the good news that Sam had her baby. And instead, it was just one of those moments where you're just like, what is going on? But I answered the phone, and instead of hearing the good news, it was her hysterically screaming and crying. And she's just like, the baby crashed, the baby crashed. And my kids were surrounding me because they were excited about cousin Sam with the first baby. And so I ran outside of the house, and for about 20 minutes, I just listened to her cry, basically hysterically. I mean, this was her first grandchild. And of course, being a childbirth attorney, I was like, well, what happened? What went wrong? Why? But then I went from this attorney brain to this human part of me that was like, wait a minute. This is what the families have been describing to me for 19 years. They always describe this life before baby and then they describe life after baby, but they describe this transition of when their baby was born and just how it was just so life changing. And I kept thinking, I'm like, is this what they're talking about? And it was, I'll tell you, the hardest part of my job has always been sitting down with the families and going over the day their baby was born. As a mom, a wife, a human, it's always had a big impact on me. So at that point, when I'm like, am I going through what the families are have gone through all these years that I've watched them. And basically, after 20 minutes, we got news the baby was going to be okay. But that moment just sat with me. It was a Friday at 5, and all weekend I was just like, wow, what just happened? And as my kids are getting older, I was like, well, I can tell you how I would prepare my kids for the birth of a baby is much different than how a family probably would normally prepare, given what I have seen, for the past now 21 years. So I started to write everything down just on the off chance I was not around for the birth of my grandkids. That day, I was 1,100 miles away from my niece. And I'm like, wait a minute, what if I'm 1,100 miles away from my kids when they go into labor? I started writing everything down that, that are common in these cases, that they're important, that people and families, should know. And I quickly realized this was not information just for my kids to help them have healthy babies, but this is information that families across the world can use to help them have a healthy baby.
Wow. I
So,
mean, I just love the unfolding of it. It was like you didn't even have the intention to write a book. And now with this, with everything that just happened in your experiences, you're like, this is your gift. This is the education, the wisdom that you're passing on to mothers that most people have no idea. They trust blindly the medical system that is a huge cause of so much trauma and tragedies.
yes, it was writing a book was absolutely never on my radar until that weekend. And, I'll tell you, once I switched gears from attorney to author, I mean, it was a floodgate of information that just came out. And the book took about 14 months, thousands of hours to write. But the first 3 months of writing, I cried every single morning. It became apparent that, I had basically emotionally suppressed everything that I had seen over the years. But at the end of the 3 months, there was this clarity that I knew things that could help other families, that could help spare other families from what I've watched these families endure over the years in my cases.
Wow. Wow. I'm just in such awe here. What are some of the biggest things that you have found through this work that mothers really need to know? Like, can you kind of give us, obviously we need to get your book. If we're having a baby, we need to get the book. I'll make sure that we have the link to that book so that everyone knows exactly where to go. But what are some of the biggest challenges that we're up against?
Well, it's interesting because you actually just kind of touched on one of them real quick when you were like, we trust the hospital system and maybe we go in blindly. But chapter 1 of my book goes over all of the lessons from the baby cases. As a lesson, we can learn from it to help it prevent it from happening in the future. And lesson number 1 by far is learning about childbirth and understanding, as a mother, you're the decision maker, your delivery team, they are not decision makers. They're like medical advisors. Nobody can do anything to mom without her consent. It's so incredibly important. And I'll tell you, the families in the cases a lot of times are one decision or minutes from a healthy baby. So it's so incredibly important to have an understanding of childbirth so you can make those good decisions. So, and that's lesson 1, that I listed in chapter 1. And then each lesson, the subsequent chapter. So I'm like, okay, everybody, we're going to learn about childbirth. But what I know about childbirth and the things that I find important about childbirth, I think are much different than somebody may read in a different, pregnancy book. So chapter 2 goes through everything that I find important as a childbirth attorney but everything that's important that will help give families the basic foundation to help them make those good decisions. But going through those lessons is incredibly important, again, because we're learning from the past to prevent it from happening in the future. But one super important lesson, and it was actually the reason I even wanted to write a book, are the mistakes and the complications that I see occur during childbirth. They're reoccurring issues. They are almost the same issues that have been happening since 2003. So if parents have an awareness of what these common issues, reoccurring issues are, it'll help them, it'll help activate their intuition. It will help them make those good decisions to make sure these mistakes and complications don't happen during the birth of their baby. So, one of the lessons is there are reoccurring issues when mistakes are made or there's complications during childbirth. And chapter 11 again goes through the top 10. But number 1, the most common issue, in fact, in a legal baby case is the drug Pitocin. Pitocin is the drug that is used to induce mom's labor, which is becoming more and more common these days. In the past, these were medical inductions, but now everybody's allowed to do elective inductions of labor. And the way you get that moving is the drug, again, Pitocin. So if a case comes on my desk, almost always the first words I read are, "Mom is being induced with Pitocin." And that's when, again, your complications and mistakes arise. So what I did then is in my book, because I analyzed this drug over, now the course of 21 years, I've traveled the country, meeting with delivery teams, going over the use of this drug, research the drug. I mean, you name it. It's been a big part of my profession for a long time. And so I wrote a chapter on how to have a safe Pitocin induction that really needs to be read by any and everybody who would consider having one. So yeah, but there's other stuff, another one that's so incredibly important. I don't think moms, realize I didn't know until I got into this profession. But, a lot of times a delivery team or a doctor will recommend breaking your bag of water because let's jumpstart labor. Let's get it going. Well, listen, if there's a complication or a mistake, almost always it's after mom's water breaks. That is an incredibly important decision. So if doctor is like, hey, I want to break your bag of water, don't just say, okay. Is there a medical reason why you want to break my bag of water? Again, mom, no matter how they say it to you, you're the decision maker. And I know some doctors talk as in they're telling you what to do. No, they're not. They're actually giving you recommendations because nobody can break your bag of water without your permission. So, it's very important to find out, why do you want to break my bag of water? It also speeds up labor. So, I've had cases where doctors like to be home for dinner. So they will make their rounds early in the morning. And if it's okay to break the water, they'll break the water early in the morning. And the nurses are always like, yeah, that way they're home for dinner, So those are important, an important question that make sure you ask if doctor ever wants to or recommends breaking your bag of water.
I mean, that is so common.
Right.
I
Right.
almost feel like it's always break the water, give Pitocin, let's speed this up.
That's when your complications and mistakes occur.
Mm.
So, like we talked about in pre-show, because I just think this is so incredibly important. Natural, spontaneous vaginal birth, those cases are few and far between. So if you take that route, if you skip the drugs, I can tell you right now, there's less chance of a complication or a mistake during the birth of your baby.
So why is it that these things keep happening? That's what I understand. If it's always happening and we're always seeing these complications, why are doctors and the medical team still able to do this?
So one thing that threw me off when I first started in this profession were the absolute different opinions of different doctors. Doctors with childbirth do not agree. They
Mm.
do have guidelines that they are to, go by or whatever, but each patient, each labor is completely different. And how one doctor may manage that patient may be completely different than how another doctor manages that patient. So one big thing that's, happened in my cases is that I'll hire, for instance, two experts to come in. These are experts, they're OBGYNs, they deliver babies, and I retain them to look at the medical records, sometimes deposition testimony of mom, family, delivery team, just depending how far we are in the case. But I will have two experts basically look at the same care of mom. One expert will tell me everything was done right. The other expert will literally tell me everything was done wrong. Not only was it done wrong, had it been done right, baby would have been born healthy. So here's the deal. When mom's in labor, there's two patients in labor, mom, baby. Mom is easy. Mom talks, communicates. Doctors can look at mom. The delivery team can look at mom. If they're trained to look, okay, is mom in a bunch of pain? Okay, they're trained to look at that and know by looking at her face. And again, communicating, diagnosing, making a plan, doing whatever they got to do. Baby is so incredibly different. Baby's inside mom. So it's harder to assess baby. And I think that's really where this huge spectrum of different opinions come into play, is that you really, there's so much different ways to manage a mom because you don't know how baby's doing. Baby's inside mom. So it really makes it so these doctors have, different opinions. So that's the only thing. That's why I've gone, and that's in my book. I write. And I remember early in my career, I would be talking to one doctor and I would be like, why is your opinion so different than the other doctor? I mean, completely different. And from day one, ever since I've started asking that question to the doctors, they're like, the other doctor's crazy. They don't even acknowledge that their opinion might be valid.
Wow.
They're right. Everybody else is wrong.
Are doctors incentivized to do these interventions in any way? Do you know that if they're actually incentivized to do these? Because anytime you're going to give more drugs or do more procedures or interventions, it's going to cost more money. So I wonder if there's that conflict of interest as well. Have you seen that?
I think doctors get paid on the delivery of the baby. So whichever doctor catches the baby gets to bill for that. I personally think with the OB/GYNs, well, not the GYNs, but the OBs. The OBs are the ones that's OB and GYN are two different professions. So I should say obstetrician. I personally don't think they think their profession through before they get into it. They think, oh, let's deliver babies. And you know what? That's beautiful. That's great.
Yeah.
However, babies come when babies want to come. So doctors who deliver babies work nights. They work weekends. They have really long shifts. If they picking up shifts at the hospital, that's a 12-hour shift.
Mm.
So sometimes I'm like, do they really think this through? And maybe earlier in their years and they're gung ho, but as like all of us, we age, we get older, we have families.
Mhm.
And, we have soccer games, baseball games, whatever, dance, and some doctors, I think, get to a point where they just may want to expedite the delivery of a
Mhm.
baby in order, again, be home for dinner, catch the soccer game, don't miss the wedding, whatever it is. Now, listen, some doctors may listen to this and be like, I would never do that. Right. I understand there are a lot of doctors that would never do that. But unfortunately, there are doctors that, do. And I've had them in the cases.
I mean, that just feels so true to my heart as a fundamental issue of speeding up this beautiful natural process that, we've as women have been giving birth, some in ancient times in the middle of the river, in the middle of, it's like now we're just medicalized it so much. We're laying on our backs in awkward positions. We're pumped full of things. And what I feel is that you're helping us work back into truly bringing children in a way that's sacred, in a way that creator spirit and created us to do this. And it's been so medicalized. And now it's a business. I mean, it really is a business now rather than just like anything. We have good intentions. We're going to help moms, but now it becomes like ching, ching, ching. I love what you're doing. I think this is so important for mothers to understand what they're up against and to truly armor themselves with this knowing and this wisdom and this knowledge. And isn't it true that the United States has some of the worst, I mean, statistics when it comes to babies being born?
Yeah, that's interesting. I get that a lot in my podcast that I go on with the high mortality rates of moms, babies versus other countries. And it's alarming. It's very alarming. And I mean, keep in mind when I got hired into this industry in February, I was hired into a team of over 20 people, and this is all we did. So, right. It's, unfortunately, it's been occurring. And I think, if we can revert back to trusting our bodies, your body knows what to do. You have to trust it. Go back to natural vaginal births. A lot more healthy babies will be born. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Wow. We know we're going to get all the information in the book. And I think it's really important if you are having a child or you know someone that's having a child that they are armed with this information. But what are some of the big questions that we can ask our doctors if we're starting to interview this person that's going to bring our child into the world or help us do that? What are some of the big questions that we need to ask?
Oh, sure. And that's a great question. So I do have a chapter on how to pick the good doctor. And just so your audience understands, your delivery team, which is headed by your doctor, which the head of that is your doctor, they're responsible for bringing your baby safely into this world. So the OB/GYN that you pick plays such an important role during childbirth. And basically, because I do the childbirth cases, I have analyzed OB/GYNs for a very long time. I took that expertise, and then that's chapter 4 of my book. So there are, and I include this at the end of my book, there are 20 questions that you should ask or understand about your OBGYN. You may not have to ask all of them. You might be able to find them online. But in my cases, when we're like, okay, is this a good doctor, a bad doctor? Can we put the doctor in front of a jury? These are the questions that we ask. And when I was writing this book, I'm like, well, everybody, I mean, if when my daughters get pregnant, I'm gonna know all of the answers to these questions, for their doctors. So they're really important. But even before you pick your doctor or during or while you're picking your doctor, there are some things to consider before you even ask the questions. And I call it my doctor analysis, but they're so easy and basic. So when you're talking to your doctor for the first time during that prenatal visit, no, you have to follow your instincts and intuition. Do you like the doctor? And
Mm.
just because your best friend likes the doctor does not mean you have to like the doctor. Just like there are different kinds of patients, there are so many different kinds of doctors. You have to be able to connect with your doctor and feel comfortable with your doctor. So if your doctor, you do ask maybe one of these questions and they give you a two-word answer and they're not explaining things, you might be like, or
Mm.
they're rushed or, whatnot, because keep in mind how they're acting right there in that prenatal visit easily could be how they act during childbirth. Another important thing with your doctor is watching how they communicate, because again, how they communicate with you is likely how they communicate with your delivery team. Your doctor, unless they're picking up a 12-hour shift at the hospital, only comes in to catch baby. Maybe checks on mom, but really only comes in to deliver baby. It's the delivery team at the hospital that is bedside giving direct patient care.
Mm.
So the doctor needs to have those good communication skills so they can communicate effectively because he or she's not there. So, but I think a couple important questions is, probably one of the number one question I ask in a case when I'm talking to a doctor about a childbirth case is, so doctors who deliver babies are obstetricians and gynecologists. These are two separate professions. Obstetricians deliver babies. Gynecologists are like the women, the chick issues when you're not pregnant. But I always ask, what percentage of your practice is obstetrics versus gynecology? Because, like we
Mm.
talked about earlier, just a few minutes ago on the podcast, I'm not sure doctors quite think their profession through with delivering babies because it's such a hard schedule. However, GYN is 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. So sometimes as doctors age, they're like, okay, I'm kind of done with the baby thing. I'm going to go mainly do 9 to 5 gynecology. So in my opinion, you want a doctor who's, delivering babies all the time in the trenches. And there are really good ones who, that's what they do. They're going to have a better rapport with the delivery team. They're going to know the people on the delivery team better versus a doctor who really has gone to, GYN and it's only like delivering a handful of babies every year. So if you go to the GYN or OBGYN that your mom went to thinking, okay, this doctor delivered me, now this doctor's going to deliver my baby, you might want to be like, are you just going to, how many deliveries are you doing a year? So
Mm.
that's another question. And then, there's just so many different, I like to, how far is the doctor from the hospital?
Ooh.
Yeah, because I have a lot of doctors who are not close and they get a long drive and a lot of times, they don't make it. And then it's the staff, the in-house attending that's doing the delivery or somebody else is doing the delivery. So, how far are you? And if it's so another common issue in my cases is a very busy labor and delivery unit. So
Mm.
if the unit's really busy, and your doctor's far away, and if you're like in Michigan and you have rush hour, oh boy, that could be a problem. So
Yeah.
it's tough, there's about 20 of those questions, just kind of understanding your doctor, a little bit more specifics, because, yes, pregnancy is important, but childbirth is the big day. It's
Yeah.
the powerful moment where you're going to hold your baby for the first time. So it's really important that you are comfortable with your doctor.
I mean, it's so incredible. I shared this earlier. Both of my births were very traumatizing, but I would never have thought about asking about logistics. and understanding these interventions. And before we kind of bring it all home, these interventions, is there a possibility that if we don't accept the interventions that they won't care for us? Because I was told that I had the strep B, right? And so they were
Hmm.
pumping me full of antibiotics, and I, in my gut, was like, I don't, because don't we have it, and then we don't have it, and everybody has it. But I just knew,
Right.
and I said, no, I don't want this. And they said, well, then we're not going to deliver here, basically. Can they do that? Can they turn you away if you don't accept an intervention?
It's interesting. It probably depends on how far you are in labor. Are you in labor? Every hospital system is different.
Mm,
So there's a lot of factors that go
okay.
into that. I mean, if that's something that is discussed during your pregnancy, then that hospital
Mm,
may be like, yeah, you're going to have to find like a different hospital. But I mean, if you're in labor, you're dilating, you're contracting, but you don't want to be, you don't want all the antibiotics for
mhm.
them to, if something tell you something happens to baby or mom because they won't care for you because of that,
Yeah.
that's a huge problem.
Mm,
What they should do, what most hospital systems probably would do, I would assume, is that they will chart that you are group B positive and that you're declining antibiotics. That's what should be done. They should not refuse care to you. Now, they may kind of do a bluff and you could really see if they're going to refuse care. If you're in labor, though, they just need to document and that covers them. You don't want it and something does happen because you didn't get it, they're covered. There's
yeah.
no reason to refuse care. So, but again, every hospital system, they're different. So,
Yeah. Well, and I think what I'm really hearing is how vital it is for us to understand each of the interventions that can potentially be offered to us. What are the risks involved? And to be able to trust ourselves, because I've heard so many women just be kind of bullied into doing these interventions when they knew in their heart they didn't, but they felt like they were so pressured that they eventually gave up. They didn't have anyone there to really advocate for them because you're in such a vulnerable
mhm.
position. And not only that, you're vulnerable, you're in pain, and you don't really know. And so you're really giving blind faith to this group of people that most likely the doctor needs to be home, for his kid's soccer game.
Right. Yeah, I'll tell you. So I have been on a lot of podcasts going over the book and, the story and whatnot. And it is so concerning. All of the feedback that I continue to get to this day, basically exactly what you're saying, that, moms are being bullied. They are. Listen, when you go into labor, you enter a different state of mind. It's one of the only times in life where being in a bunch of pain is okay. And you need to, focus mentally and physically on delivering your baby. So then sometimes if you do have the doctors or a nurse or a midwife, a resident pushing stuff on you, sometimes, yeah, it's easier just to give up. So that's why it's so incredibly important to get ready for childbirth. So you understand that you don't have to give up. You understand the basics. In my book, I think chapter 6, one of the lessons is preparing a birth plan. Listen, it's not even the plan in and of itself, it's the act of preparing the plan, marinating in the different decisions. Because, first of all, planning a labor out, good luck. That's almost impossible.
Yeah.
But that's the exact reason you need a plan because you have to be able to pivot, make those good decisions. Because again, families are one decision minutes from a healthy baby. So it is important, but yes, I continue to hear this and I continue to hear too. A lot of nurses are gravitating to my book, my labor and delivery nurses, because they actually have the doctors going, okay, increase the Pitocin, increase the Pitocin. And they're like, we don't want to increase the Pitocin. The Pitocin's fine. You're going to put, baby at risk. And so I do have a chapter on how to have that safe Pitocin induction. So the nurses are, like, no, I'm not going to increase the Pitocin. And, this is Gina Mundy's book. She's a childbirth attorney, and this is what she said. I'm not doing it. So I have nurses standing up to doctors right now. So yeah, hopefully, it's something where, parents can push back, moms can push back. Another big thing in my book too is, the dads coming in to help. Dads instinctively want to protect mom and baby. At the end of the day, they want mom and baby to come home with them. And my book will literally tell them how to do that. And same thing with grandmas. Grandmas are loving my book. Why? Think about it. I wrote it for healthy grandkids. I put this all together a couple months ago, but I'm like, what's up with the grandmas in my book? I'm like, oh, that's right. I wrote it so I have healthy grandkids. But they are my generation. They like how I speak. I'm very direct,
Mm.
and whatnot. But it's also getting dad involved, dad having an understanding of what's going on, or having a baby advocate like grandma, like moms. Or in it, you know what? It doesn't necessarily have to be mom. It could be best friend. It could be aunt. It could be, it could
Doulas.
be whoever, again, to kind of like protect you if they do want to try to push you into something that you're not comfortable with. Because again, like you're a very vulnerable state of mind when you're in labor.
I feel like this would also be a great book for doulas, people
Oh.
that are hired by, because I know a lot of our hippie moms. I had a doula for my second birth,
Hmm.
and just to have someone that understands it, that understands the medical system, knows what they're going to come back at, because you need someone that you can trust, that can advocate for you in those moments, because it's going to be very challenging to make those decisions, and because you are in an altered mental state. You're just trying to focus on your body, and a miracle is happening through you. And so I love this. It's really about having someone be an advocate, having them understand this. I feel like the whole family needs to read this book. Whoever's going to be in that room with you needs to understand this. And I feel like this would benefit doulas so much, because we have a lot of home births. We have a lot of women here that love the home births, but not everyone's going to have a home birth. That's not going to work for everybody. And so I think it's so important that we have these resources and we educate ourselves before we go into the biggest day of our life.
Yeah, 100%. And now you mentioned doula. I talk about doulas a lot too. So I love doulas. Doulas help bring babies safely into this world. In
Mhm.
my legal cases, there are no doulas. And I wish I would have had more in my book about doulas. It did not really click in my brain that, wait a minute, doulas are not in my cases. Doulas are all over Michigan, by the way. My kids will have doulas, absolutely 100% as part of the, safer childbirth experience. But no, doulas are not, because they are advocating for their patients. They are familiar with the hospital system. They know that mom's the decision maker, and doulas do a really good job of preparing mom for childbirth. Again, lesson one from the legal baby cases. So yes, as a childbirth attorney, I am a huge fan of doulas.
I love to hear that. Mine was just absolutely incredible. She had all the tools, all the little oils, all
Hmm.
the things, set the space, put the candles on, keep the lights off, keep the
Hmm.
people out that weren't supposed to be there. It was really beautiful. And I love that. I think that's a whole other market that really needs to have this book, especially the up and coming doulas, those that are going to be doing it for the next generation.
Absolutely. And I think doulas will be becoming more and more popular. I am advocating for, doulas. I have met so many amazing doulas, and they really are such great people.
I love that. Gina, this has been such a beautiful conversation. I know there are so many golden nuggets and seeds that are going to be planted with women that are listening now, that are going to be listening in the future. And I want to just tell you from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you so much for doing what you do and bringing this wisdom to mothers, because I really feel a shift in how we bring, humans onto this planet. And we know that things aren't working. We know that things are going to change. And so I just really feel like you're paving a path for all of us.
Oh, Becky, that means so much. Thank you. And I just enjoy talking to you so much. You are such a kind, loving, want to do the best thing for people, help people, even provide a platform like this for me to come on and talk and help people and try to do, what I do more effectively. So thank you. And thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, it is my honor. It is a co-creation, and it is such a beautiful way to bring our energies together to serve the greater good of humanity. Do you have a copy of your book you can hold up? I'm going to order one, by the way, but you have a copy of your book you can hold up for all of our
Oh,
video watchers.
of course, mine has Post-its all
I
over it.
love it. A parent's guide to
So,
safer
but yeah,
childbirth. Mhm.
yep, expecting the
Perfect.
best, how using the power of knowledge can help you deliver a healthy baby.
I love
I have
it.
to get one without so many Post-its to put next to me.
Oh
Usually
my,
I do have
I
a, but
love
I'm
the
like, where's
post.
my other copy?
I love the
Um,
post-its. It's real, it's raw, it shows how much that what all these little things that are in there that I really feel that anyone that is listening to this podcast that is going to be having a baby, that knows someone having a baby, is going to share this work. And I'm going to make sure that we have the link to your book in the show notes so people can go right there and get it for them.
thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, my honor. All right, Gina. Well, everyone, thank you so much for being here. I will make sure that all of Gina's links on her Instagram, everywhere you can find her, her website, her book is going to be in the show notes so you don't miss a beat. And please share this work, my friends, with anyone you know that's having a baby, thinking about having a baby, because really it could literally mean life and death for their child. So make sure you get it, share it. And thanks again, Gina. And we'll see you all in the next Hippie Moms podcast.